Scott's face went bright red as he slammed his office door so hard the glass rattled. "You're joking, right? You're actually quitting." My resignation letter sat on his desk like a live grenade. I didn't flinch, just folded my hands and said, "Best of luck with the transition." The name's Kevin Rodriguez, by the way, 51 years old. And I just handed my walking papers to the man who thought he could screw over a guy with 20 years of corporate experience and 6 years Navy under his belt. Big mistake. See guys like Scott? Count on your loyalty, your dedication, your willingness to keep your head down and get the job done. They never prepare for the moment. The quiet professional finally walks away, and they sure as hell never read the fine print on contracts they signed years ago. Let me back up a bit. This whole mess didn't start with Scott's promotion, denial. It started way back when I joined Industrial Systems Corp. Fresh out of the Navy, I wasn't looking for glory or corner offices. I just wanted to use what I'd learned in military logistics to build something that lasted. "You know what I like about you, Rodriguez?" My first boss had said during my interview, "You don't need a spotlight to get work done." That was true then, and it's true now. While other guys were playing politics and posting on LinkedIn about synergy, I was the one actually making things work. When our biggest defense contract hit a snag in Q2, I was the guy who figured out why 3 different supply chain systems couldn't talk to each other. I remember calling Jennifer that Friday night. "Honey, I'm gonna be late. This Peterson thing's a mess. How late?" she asked. I could hear the tiredness in her voice. The chemo was hitting her hard those days. Maybe all weekend, but if I don't fix this, we're looking at a $2 million penalty. She didn't complain, never did, just said, "Do what you need to do." So I spent Saturday and Sunday in an empty office, rebuilding integration protocols while everyone else was at their kids' soccer games. Fixed the whole thing by Monday morning when the Pentagon demanded a 30% cost reduction on our logistics platform. 6 months later, I found ways to streamline operations that saved the company $380,000 without cutting a single job. They started calling me the problem solver because nothing stayed broken when I touched it, and I didn't mind. I liked the steady work. Liked knowing I could prevent disasters before they happened. Jennifer was fighting her 2nd round of cancer, and our son Danny was looking at colleges that cost more than my first house stability mattered. "Dad, Georgetown's really expensive," Danny had said over dinner one night, sliding the brochure across the table. "Don't worry about that. I told him you focus on getting in. I'll handle the money part." Jennifer squeezed my hand under the table. She knew what that meant. More late nights, more projects, more proving I was worth the salary that covered her treatments and his future. But here's what happens when you're too good at cleaning up messes quietly. The same people who used to say, "Rodriguez saved our necks," start saying Rodriguez just handles the back-end stuff. The ones who used to pull you into emergency meetings start sending meeting notes to your inbox. Like an afterthought, Scott wasn't always like that when he was just a department head. He'd stop by my desk and say things like, "I don't know how you keep all these plates spinning, but thank God you do just good organization." I'd tell him what I didn't mention was the Navy habit of documenting everything, every decision, every approval, every promise in the military. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. Then came Scott's VP promotion, and things started changing. The gratitude turned into expectation. Every quarter brought more demands and fewer thank yous. He'd swing by my desk and bark orders like finance needs, those roll-up projections revised by 6, no greeting, no please, no acknowledgement that I'd already put in a 10-hour day. I didn't complain. Navy taught me to keep detailed logs of everything. So that's what I did. Every project, milestone, every deadline I hit, every crisis I prevented, not for revenge, at least, not at first, just good operational practice. You're building quite a file there. Jennifer had noticed one evening watching me organize project documentation at the kitchen table, 20 years of experience. I said, "Gotta keep track of it all. You think they'll try to screw you over?" I looked up from my papers. "Honey, in corporate America, it's not." If it's when she nodded, she'd seen enough of my coworkers get thrown under the bus to know I wasn't being paranoid. Then came the big one, the Peterson defense contract renewal, 18 months of work, 3 facilities, 2 time zones, and a client who'd fired the last 3 contractors. Everyone said it was career suicide to take point on it. "Rodriguez, you sure you want?" "You sure this one?" Scott had asked in the project assignment meeting. "It's a real bear high visibility, high risk." "I'll take it," I said, simple as that. The other department heads exchanged glances. Mark from engineering actually whistled low. "Better you than me, Kevin." But I wasn't worried. See, the Navy teaches you something corporate. America forgets. Preparation beats panic. Every time you document everything, plan for contingencies, and execute with precision. Do that right, and the high-risk projects become your biggest wins. 15 months later, I was sitting in Scott's office with the Peterson completion report on schedule, under budget by 380,000, client satisfaction scores through the roof. The kind of numbers that make executives smile in board meetings. "Outstanding work. Kevin, really outstanding," Scott said. Flipping through the summary pages, his handshake was sweaty and his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. "We'll talk about that promotion track real soon." "Sounds good," I said. But something in his tone felt off, like he was reading from a script he didn't believe in. See, by then, I'd learned to read the signs. 20 years in corporate America teaches you that when promises start getting vague, you better start watching your back. I walked out of his office and called Jennifer from my car. "How'd it go?" She asked. "Project's done. Scott says promotion talks coming. That's great." "Honey, Danny will be so excited about Georgetown." "Yeah," I said, but I wasn't feeling as confident as I sounded. "We'll see what happens." The thing is, I already knew better, because by then, I'd learned the unwritten rule of corporate America. If they think you'll stay, no matter what, they'll give you exactly that. Nothing. 3 weeks went by. No promotion conversation. No follow-up meeting. Scott would nod when he passed my desk. But he wasn't stopping to chat anymore when I tried to schedule time to discuss my career track. His assistant kept saying he was swamped with strategic planning. Strategic planning, that's corporate speak for. We're figuring out how to screw you without it looking obvious. Then came the morning that changed everything. I was getting coffee when Sarah Collins from HR walked up with that careful smile people use when they're about to drop a bomb. "Congrats on your new boss, I guess," she said. I nearly choked on my coffee. "New boss?" She tilted her head like a confused dog. "Oh, Scott didn't tell you. They announced Brad Wilson as the new Senior Director of Operations this morning." Brad Wilson. I set my coffee down hard enough that it sloshed. 6 months ago. This guy was some hotshot consultant who'd shown up with PowerPoint slides and a habit of explaining my own systems back to me like I was fresh out of college. "You okay, Kevin?" Sarah asked. "Yeah, I lied. Just surprised. That's all." I walked back to my desk. Like I was heading to my own execution, opened up the company announcement on my laptop there. It was in corporate black and white, excited to welcome Brad Wilson as Senior Director of Operations. Brad brings fresh perspective and innovative thinking to our operational strategy. Fresh perspective, innovative thinking. That's code for, we hired someone younger who went to the right school and plays golf with the VP. Brad was the guy who'd called our logistics network the supply chain thingy in budget meetings, who'd ask me to explain basic integration protocols 3 different times because he couldn't wrap his head around how our systems actually worked, who cut out of planning sessions early because he had client calls that were really just networking lunches. My phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer. "How's your day going?" I stared at that message for a long time. How was my day going? Well, let's see, the guy I'd spent 15 months training just got the promotion. I'd earned the position that would have bumped my salary enough to cover Danny's tuition without stress. The title that would have meant something when Jennifer's next round of treatment started. I texted back, "Interesting developments talk tonight." Scott didn't have the guts to call me directly. He just showed up at my desk 2 days later with a paper coffee cup and a grin that looked like it was stapled on. "Hey, don't take this personally," he started. "This wasn't about you. It's about optics. Brad's got that outside experience that makes the board feel good about our direction." I looked at that coffee cup like it might bite me. "Did they review the Peterson numbers?" Sure. "Great work on that." He waved it off like I'd asked about the weather, but this decision was already in motion. These things move fast in today's market, already in motion while I was busting my ass for 15 months. They were already planning to hand my job to someone else. Then he dropped the line. I'll never forget, you're essential. Regardless of title promotions, don't define impact. That's when the light bulb clicked on. This wasn't some last-minute change of plans. Scott had never intended to promote me. I'd been the useful idiot who did the hard work while they lined up their golden boy for the credit. I see. I said nothing else. Just those two words. Scott must have heard something in my tone because he shifted on his feet. Look, Kevin, there might be other opportunities coming up. Director-level positions. We just need to see how the next quarter shapes up. More promises, more vague timelines, more corporate bullshit designed to keep me hoping while they figured out their next move. I appreciate that I told him. But what I was really thinking was how my old Navy commander used to say, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you can kiss my anchor chain." That night at dinner, I finally told Jennifer what had happened. They gave it to someone else, she asked, after everything you did. Yep. Guy named Brad Wilson, consultant. They brought in 6 months ago. Jennifer put down her fork. What's his experience with defense contracts? None. He asked me what app I stood for last week. You're kidding. Nope. But he's got an MBA and plays golf with Scott. Danny looked up from his homework at the kitchen table. Does this mean Georgetown's off the table? Jennifer and I exchanged glances. We'll figure it out, I said. Don't worry about that part. But the truth was, I was worried not just about the money, though that was real enough. I was worried about what this meant for the next 15 years of my career if they could screw me over this blatantly after the Peterson success. What was going to happen when I hit 55-60? Would I just be the old guy they kept around to train their next batch of golden boys that night? I couldn't sleep. Jennifer was snoring softly next to me, and I was staring at the ceiling, thinking about respect. Not the fake corporate respect that comes with titles and meeting invitations. Real respect, the kind you earn by being competent and reliable and getting results when it matters. Scott had taken that away from me, not just the promotion, the respect he'd made. It clear that 20 years of experience meant less than 6 months of golf games and NBA networking. I got up around 2 a.m. and went to my home office, pulled out the contract I'd signed 3 years ago, the one with the retention clause they'd insisted on when Morrison Industries tried to poach me time to see if Scott had read the fine print as carefully as I had. I sat there in my home office at 2 a.m. reading that contract like it was a treasure map, and buried on page 7 in section 7C was the clause that was about to change everything in lieu of advancement to promised position, employee may elect separation, with compensation equivalent to promoted role, including accelerated bonus structure, extended benefits coverage, and early retirement bridge calculation. Scott's signature sat right there at the bottom, clear as day, dated 3 years ago when Morrison Industries had tried to steal me away with a 40% raise. I remembered that negotiation. Scott had been sweating bullets about losing me. Kevin, you're irreplaceable. He'd said, whatever they're offering, we'll match it. Plus this retention package to show we're serious about your future here. I'd read every word of that contract before signing Old Navy habit. Never sign anything. You don't understand completely, but I'd figured it was just standard legal language protection that would never be needed. Turns out, Scott should have read it more carefully too. I pulled out my laptop and searched through 3 years of emails, found the thread from 8 months ago when I'd asked about the senior director position. Scott's response was right there in black and white. After Peterson raps, "You're the obvious choice for the next level," another email from 5 months backboards aligned on your advancement track, just waiting on budget approval for the new positions, and the kicker sent right after I'd submitted the Peterson final report. Finish strong on this one, and the senior director role is yours. Promises written. Promises with timestamps and digital signatures. I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the lake behind our house. The water was dead calm, reflecting the moon like a mirror. That's when I knew what I had to do. Not because I was angry. Anger's a luxury guys like me can't afford, because it was the right tactical move. Scott had broken a written contract, and there were consequences for that. He just didn't know it yet. The next morning at breakfast, Jennifer could tell something had shifted. "You seem different today," she said, pouring coffee more relaxed somehow. "Had a good night thinking things through," I told her. "Remember that retention contract they gave me 3 years ago? The one with all the fine print? That's the one turns out Scott should have read it more carefully." She raised an eyebrow. "What did you find an exit clause if they promise a promise promotion and don't deliver? I can walk with full compensation at the promoted level." Jennifer set her coffee cup down hard. "Are you serious, dead serious?" Scott signed it himself. "What's that mean for us financially? I did the math in my head. About $420,000 total covers Danny's college and your treatments, plus early retirement bridge to my Navy pension." For the first time in months, Jennifer smiled like she meant it. "When do you do it, Monday morning? Give me the weekend to get everything organized?" Danny walked into the kitchen, backpack slung over his shoulder. "Do what Monday morning?" Jennifer and I exchanged glances. "Your dad's making some career changes." She said, "Good changes." I ruffled his hair. "The best kind. Don't worry about Georgetown anymore. Kiddo, we've got it covered that weekend." I went through my files like I was preparing for a military inspection. Every project milestone, every email, approval, every document. With Scott's digital signature, I organized it all into folders. Peterson completion promotion promises, contract violations supporting evidence. Sunday night, I wrote the resignation letter. Not some emotional manifesto, just clean professional language. Effective immediately, vacation payout requested. Thanks for the opportunities, wishing continued success. No anger, no accusations, just facts. Monday morning, I was standing in Scott's office at 8:15 a.m. while he stirred sugar into his coffee. His hair was still messy from the weekend, and he had that Monday morning look of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "Kevin, hey," he said without looking up. "What can I do for you?" I handed him the envelope. "Thanks for the opportunities over the years, wishing you continued success." He squinted at it like it might explode. "What's this, Reddit?" I said. I watched his face change as he scanned the page. First confusion, then something that looked like panic. The slow realization that he'd misjudged the quiet guy who never made waves. "You're serious?" His voice cracked a little. "You're actually quitting?" Effective immediately, he stood up fast enough to knock his coffee cup over. Hold on. We need to talk about this. There might be other opportunities coming up. The board's looking at expanding the director roles." "No thanks," I said. "I've got all I need." "Kevin, come on. We can work something out. What's this really about?" "The Brad situation. Look, that was just politics. You know how these things work." "I know exactly how they work." I said, "That's why I'm leaving." He was starting to sweat. "Now can we at least discuss transition? The Peterson clients specifically requested you for the next phase. They're expecting continuity. All project documentation is in the shared drive. Transition notes are updated, contact lists are current. But Kevin, you are the Peterson relationship without you. You should have thought about that before you gave my promotion to a consultant who doesn't know an APA from a VPN that hit home." Scott's face went from pale to red. "Look, mistakes were made, but walking away isn't the answer. We can fix this. It's already fixed," I said, and I turned to walk out. "Kevin, wait," Scott called after me. "We need to discuss this properly. Let me call HR. Let me call the board. We can make this right." I stopped at his doorway and looked back. "Scott, you had 15 months to make it. Right, time's up." Walking past Sarah Collins from HR, I saw her open her mouth, then close it. Smart woman. By the time I reached my desk, word was already spreading. My team lead was hovering like I'd been diagnosed with something terminal. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "Never better," I said, and started shutting down my laptop, just making a career change. I packed slowly, let them feel the silence around 10:30. A meeting invite hit my inbox. Urgent resignation discussion, all parties. I declined it without opening and finished logging out of everything by 11. I was in my truck heading home, and Scott had already left 4 missed calls on my personal phone. Funny how urgency works. Used to take him a week to respond to project updates. Now suddenly, he couldn't get through a Monday morning without me. I didn't answer because the conversation was over and the paperwork was just beginning. By the time I got home and kicked off my shoes, the fireworks had already started. My personal email was pinging like a slot machine. Even though I'd locked out of all company systems, some notifications still filtered through like echoes from a past life. Around 2 p.m., one subject line made me laugh out loud. Urgent documentation. Review legal required. Legal had finally asked the question they should have asked weeks ago. What exactly did we promise Kevin Rodriguez, and do we have it in writing? The answer was sitting in my personnel file, and it wasn't pretty for them. Jennifer found me on the back deck, beer in hand, watching the lake. You seem awfully relaxed for someone who just quit their job. She said, I didn't just quit. I told her I activated a clause. Scott forgot. He signed. What's that mean exactly? I pulled up the contract on my phone and showed her Section 7C. It means they owe me exactly what they promised. Senior Director compensation, accelerated bonus, the whole package. She read it twice, and Scott signed this 3 years ago when Morrison tried to steal me. Oh my God, Kevin, he has no idea what's about to hit him. My phone buzzed, text from Alex Turner in finance, one of the few guys there with any sense. Scott's in full panic mode. Legal just asked why we let you walk board, wants answers. Another text. He's telling them he thought you'd reconsider before finalizing. Reconsider, like I was some college kid having second thoughts about dropping out of football. I wasn't a boomerang. I was a guy who'd kept their biggest contracts from becoming lawsuits. And Scott thought I'd just orbit back waiting for his permission to matter. What happens now, Jennifer asked. Now they scramble, try to figure out how much this is going to cost them. Then they pay up the emergency meeting. Happened that afternoon. I wasn't there, obviously, but Alex called me that evening with the play-by-play. They pulled every document with your name on it, he said, voice low, like he was talking to someone in witness protection. Scott's sweating bullets. The CFO asked, why nobody flagged the retention clause in your contract, because Scott figured I'd never use it well. He's figuring different. Now they found the email threads, all your Peterson documentation, even the SharePoint logs, showing you wrote everything Brad's been taking credit for. I almost felt sorry for Scott. Almost. But then I remembered his coffee cup and his fake smile and that line about promotions not defining impact. How's Brad handling the pressure? I asked. Alex snorted. He lasted exactly one client meeting. Peterson's procurement chief asked him about failover protocols, and Brad just stared at him like he'd been asked to explain quantum physics. Ouch, gets better. Brad tried to wing it, started talking about agile deployment methodologies or some buzzword nonsense. Client cut him off and asked specifically for you. That made sense. I'd spent 15 months building those relationships, explaining technical details, being available for 2 a.m. crisis calls when their European systems hiccuped. Brad thought he could just slide in and coast on my work. Where's it stand? Now I asked legal, confirmed your clause is valid, HR's calculating the payout, and Brad submitted his resignation this morning. Brad quit. Yep, apparently realized that looking good in PowerPoint isn't the same as actually running operations. Tuesday morning brought the official response email from Legal CCED to HR and Scott. We acknowledge the validity of your separation claim under Section 7 or CE. Compensation package confirmed and processing initiated. Clean, professional. The sound of a company that knew it was beaten. My phone rang an hour later. Scott's personal number. Kevin. Listen, he started, that desperate edge in his voice. Maybe we can work something out. The board's reconsidering the organizational structure. There might be room for both you and Brad in senior roles. Brad already quit. I said silence. Then what? This morning, guess? Senior director was tougher than he expected. More silence. I could hear Scott calculating, probably realizing that losing both of us left him with nobody who actually understood how the Peterson contract worked. Look, the client's asking for you specifically, he said. They want continuity. On the next phase, we could bring you back as a consultant. Hourly rate, flexible schedule, not interested. Kevin, be reasonable. You know this business. You know these systems better than anyone. We need. I hung up because Scott was right about one thing. I did know the business well enough to know that Mark Stevens from Peterson Defense had already called me directly. Kevin, Mark had said that morning, heard you're making some changes. Any chance you'd be interested in joining our vendor oversight board, strategic review role, quarterly input, good compensation? I'm listening. We're expanding our internal capabilities, need someone who understands both sides, vendor operations and client requirements. You'd be perfect. So by Thursday, I had a new email address and access to Peterson's systems. Same work, different side of the table. This time I was helping write the requirements that companies like ISC had to meet. The irony wasn't lost on me. The payout came through the following week. $420,000 total accelerated bonus, promoted salary calculation, extended benefits, early retirement bridge to my Navy pension, enough to cover Danny's Georgetown tuition without stress enough for Jennifer's treatments, without worry enough for me to pick my next moves based on what I wanted, not what I needed. Friday evening, Danny came home with his acceptance letter. Georgetown full admission engineering program, Dad about the tuition already handled. I told him, focus on your studies. I've got the money part covered. Jennifer squeezed my hand under the dinner table, same gesture as months ago, but this time it felt like celebration instead of worry. Saturday morning, I was back on the deck with my coffee watching the lake. Jennifer joined me with the newspaper says here that IS lost the Peterson renewal. She mentioned casually, client decided to go with internal capabilities. Instead, I smiled. Imagine that. Bet Scott's having a rough week probably. But that's what happens when you play politics with people's livelihoods. Eventually, the bills come due. She folded the paper and looked at me. Any regrets? I thought about it. 20 years of loyalty, all those late nights, all those crises I'd solved while other people took credit. Then I thought about Danny's college being paid for Jennifer's treatments, covered, and my phone already ringing with consulting offers. Not a one, I said. Sometimes the best move is just knowing when to walk away. The lake was calm as glass, reflecting the morning sun, like a promise I'd kept my word to my family and forced a contract. Scott forgot he'd signed and landed on my feet with better opportunities than I'd started with. That's the thing about quiet professionals. We don't need to make noise to make an impact. We just need to know when to speak up and what to say, when we do. In my case, it was 2 words: I quit. Turned out that was all the conversation we needed in corporate America. Loyalty only flows one direction until you make breaking it expensive, so always read the fine print on everything you sign, especially the clauses. They think you'll never use the quiet guys who keep their heads down and do the work. Aren't pushovers. We're just building our case, one document at a time, waiting for the right moment to remind everyone what confidence actually costs.